We get to talk to someone who we haven't talked to in quite some time. And last time I talked to him, he was not doing NFL games for Fox, and now he is. And that's pretty freaking cool. Robert Smith, Fox, former Viking. We'll get to the Vikings with him as well. What's going on, Robert? Welcome to Willard and Dibs. How are you, man?
Oh, man, doing great. I'm so excited to be out here and, get an opportunity to call a 49ers game for the first time this year. We've called the Cardinals a few times, but, man, it just doesn't get any better than this. You're talking about a team, ready to go into the playoffs and, just the history of this organization being out here. I have some friends on the team. Actually, one of the assistant running back coaches, Bobby Turner, was my running back coach my freshman year at Ohio State, and Chris Forrester was up there with us in Minnesota. It's just a lot of connections out here, so I'm excited.
Gosh, you mentioned Ohio State, and my brain I wasn't going to go here, but Robert, what was your reaction to that game? Robert, oh my gosh.
I mean, honestly, I thought that they would lose by double digits going in. So to me, kind of having that result, it was like, hey, it was the kicker. You should have made that kick, right? They had so many opportunities. Being up the way that they were, it was frustrating, but at the same time, it was much better than I thought it would be. So, it wasn't as bad for me.
Yeah, it was the kicker is something that's got to be tough when you're in the trenches playing the hardcore positions. But you live with the kicker, you die with the kicker. Niners almost got beaten by their own kicker against the Raiders, then rescued by the kicker. What do you make of this 49er team riding a 9-game win streak with Mr. Suddenly Relevant at quarterback?
It's unbelievable. And when I called college games, I had a chance to call Brock Purdy at Iowa State a number of times. And, just remember Matt Campbell talking about him. And, it's one thing, there's all these great stories, right? Like, oh, he's such a go-getter and he's tough and he's got this mentality. It's like, you still got to be able to make the throws, right? And I think, you still have to be making the good decisions. And, hearing Fred Warner and, all these defensive players are talking about him during camp, we knew he was ready. They could see it. He didn't care where he was drafted. He was just going to come in and make some plays. But, of course, get a lot of pieces around him, right? Hopefully be getting Debo back here soon. And, Christian's made a huge difference, obviously, for this offense as well.
Robert Smith with us here on 95.7 The Game, getting ready to call 49ers and Cardinals this weekend. Robert, I wonder what the player perspective is here. We were kicking this around. So you got 4 teams that are going to be involved in the 1 and the 2 seed race this weekend. Eagles, Cowboys, Vikings, 49ers. All of the opponents for those 4 teams this weekend appear to be laying down. They're putting in 4th-string quarterbacks and all of this stuff. What's the responsibility of a team when they're out of it, but they're going against somebody who's not?
None. I don't have any responsibility, but, there are different situations, right? And you can only rest so many guys because of the way that the rosters are constructed with the active roster. You can only truly rest so many guys. But, you wonder about players, and contract situations are different for each team and for each player. The team may not have anything that they need to get done, and that player might be going into free agency like, hell with this. I'm not going at this last week and risking this. You know what I mean? So, there are a lot of different scenarios when you have players or teams that aren't playing for, but they have no responsibility other than to field the team, right?
Yeah, it's funny because our very own Lo Neal, who's been a part of the station for years, tells a story about needing 8 catches in his final week to get an incentive, and his buddy Jim Everett just checking it down to him all day. And
that's so great.
Lo Neal being able to cash it. So everybody's got their own unique motivations. Minnesota Vikings, 12-4 with a minus 19 point differential. Who are these Vikings, Robert?
If you find out, let me know.
Yeah.
I really don't.
You're the expert.
No, I think in all seriousness, until you had the injuries with Bradbury and O'Neal now at right tackle, they're down to their 3rd center now, I believe. You had an offense that could do a lot of damage, and you had a defense that was very suspect. And I hear all this bend but don't break stuff, but I think that you're looking at a personnel group on the defensive side that had some good reputations, but just aren't quite the players that they used to be. So that's who they were. But who they are now with the problems on that offensive line, maybe first-round game probably be against the Giants. I think they could win that game potentially, but I don't see them as a team that's going to make too much more of a run. It's one thing to have injuries. When you have them stack up at one unit like that and you're playing second, third string guys, especially if the player that they're replacing had been a top-level player, you're going to struggle going into the playoffs.
Robert, around these parts, it won't surprise you. I think a lot of people would tell you would think the 49ers are the best team in the NFC. The one thing that bounces around in the backs of people's minds, though, is history. We're just trained. Rookie quarterbacks don't do this, especially when they come in halfway through a year and they're a seventh-round pick. They're not even supposed to be in the game. So what would you say to that fan that's like, I think they're the best team, but can that guy actually go win the Super Bowl?
I mean, just because you haven't doesn't mean you can't. And I know that, he's approaching all kind of unprecedented numbers, like the number of touchdowns and, in consecutive starts at the start of a career or in a rookie season, I should say. And, I know people would say that people like that can't get it done. A rookie can't get it done. But when you put the pieces around them again, especially when you've got offensive players like the 49ers do, I mean, you're going to have Debo back at some point in the playoffs, right? You're going to have Kittle in there. You've got Christian McCaffrey. You've got guys that, as long as the quarterback doesn't mess it up, combined with the defense, and I know the defense struggled a little bit last week, but it's a perfect formula. And I think that if you go back and you look at, even Peyton Manning when he won his last Super Bowl, it's not like he was the Peyton Manning that we had known before, right? But you got to have that solid defense and you got to have those other pieces around that quarterback so that they don't have to win the game throwing 40, 50 times.
Yeah, and John Elway kind of similarly at the end of his career. Damar Hamlin, great news, breathing tube out, able to communicate, FaceTimed his teammates today. What do you make of the way all this was handled by the league and how they're trying to make things fair heading into the playoffs with all of these different possible scenarios?
Well, first and foremost, it was just horrifying, right? Sitting there and watching that, Corey Stringer, who passed away in training camp of 2001, which was actually the first season that I was out of the league, was a good friend. I played with him at Ohio State, played with him with the Vikings for 6 years. That came back to my mind. Unfortunately, my brother passed away from a heart attack in 2017. He was a couple years younger than I am right now. So many emotions flooding based on what I saw and the fears that I had based on what you saw from Josh Allen's face and Stephon Diggs' face. It was just horrifying. And then turn that around here towards the end of the week and hearing the stories about him, writing out the question, who won the game? And then, now that he's FaceTiming his teammates, to me, that's the story, right? We have one of the brotherhood that almost lost his life and now he's back, and they'll figure out the playoff stuff and all the scenarios, whether it's fair, unfair. They did the right thing in canceling the games and understanding that you couldn't subject the players to the trauma of having to try and go back out and play a game after seeing that.
I think it's so well said. Great to have you, Robert Smith. Happy for you too, my friend. Robert Smith, Fox broadcaster. Welcome to town. Have a great call this weekend, man.
Oh, do you remember the joke my daughter told on the radio station?
Oh my God. I remember, but I couldn't tell it. What was it again?
Why did chicken coops have two doors?
Why do chicken coops have two doors? And?
Because if they had four doors, they'd be called chicken sedans.
There you
That's
go.
Robert Smith, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
She was 6. I still have the recording of her telling that joke on the radio.
And come for the analysis, you stay for the humor.
And how old is she now, Robert? How old now?
She's 12.
Oh, okay. Wow. Is she doing well? She doing well?
Man, so now she got her first vinyl last spring, and it was Green Day. And so we found out Green Day was going to be playing at Lollapalooza, and she got a chance to meet the drummer because, one of the guys that I work with at ESPN knew him. So we went and saw Green Day and Metallica. Yeah, it was a pretty damn good summer.
Look at you.
Yeah.
I mean,
sounds like Roxy Bernstein production to me.
Right. I tell you what, that's a good life for a 12-year-old. Robert, man, great to hear you, man. Thanks for doing it.
All right, you guys, take care.
There it goes. Robert Smith.